Thanks, Ed. You can see why I wanted Ed to share that word with us. I was so inspired, and I took all the notes. I wrote furiously fast a few weeks ago, and then when I looked at that again, I said, Ed is coming, and he's going to deliver that message here. Because there's so many wonderful stories. God is doing amazing things, and we get to be part of it. That's why I like to be part of the denominational work. I get to be part of other people's stories. And it inspires me, and I can rub shoulders with people and learn from them. And so even many years ago, as I was getting involved in ministry, I looked for these kinds of networks and relationships in order to inspire me further. So thank you for being part of this particular journey with us. So let me continue. I will transition to what many of you have seen many times, and I will say it again. Let's see, can we move this thing forward here? There we go. The service model. Many of you have seen this. I think I've heard some say, I think I've now seen that 15 times. I make zero apologies for that whatsoever. Once you can do the presentation by memory, then I'll stop. So, but what is our mission? Our mission is multiplying Christ-centered churches to see Alberta transformed with the good news of Jesus Christ. We are about developing building community, fostering our theological identity and relationships, nurturing healthy accountabilities and partnerships, and we've heard a lot about that, about resourcing ministry, offering resources and tools to help churches and organizations to help them achieve their mission. We're about developing leaders, identifying, developing, and supporting leaders to ensure the continuation of ministry. And then finally about multiplying churches or multiplying ministries, planting and multiplying disciple-making churches, and enabling missional opportunities. From our standpoint as ABMB and what the work we do is about or we call our central ministry focus, helping multiply disciple-making leaders in churches. That's our job. Now, we're not saying that these things are your church's job. That's how we do our work together. So just to be clear on that. So at the end of every day, our central ministry focus, we will evaluate from our standpoint, are we multiplying or helping to multiply disciple-making leaders in churches? So we don't get off on other kinds of tangents. This is what we do. And so my report today is really around those pieces. Well, what's happened in 2017? Well, a year ago we had a lot of conversations about our bylaws, and those bylaws I believe are serving us well together as a community. We had a lot of conversations, and frustratingly so for many of us, but we have now been able to move on into some of the other areas of mission and vision, and so we feel inspired that we can move forward with some of these other pieces. Some of you were part of our Equip conference, which was put on by the National Board of Faith and Life, which was in Abbotsford back in November, and so that was part of the process of talking about what does it mean to make disciples? Well, how do we get back to some of these basics within our churches? A big part of the conversation at last year was also nationally around the MB mission and the C2C merger. And so that was really about a 2.5-year process of conversations and planning. And as of January 1, that agency, or those two agencies, have become one entity. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. I am really excited that we've been able to move the big rock forward of what we call Next Gen Ministries. And you've heard from me yesterday with regard to some of the passions I have for next generation and to see God moving forward in these things. And so SOAR Alberta is going to be one of these ministries that we can move forward and advance how we do ministry together, especially kind of targeted around youth and young adults. But it's more than just that. There's families that are invited to participate, but I'm really excited about what God will be doing in that whole area and how we can work together in that. And of course, there's many more things that we could talk about. On page 6, I have given you some statistics. I'm not going to give you those details. I have a lot of slides that I could show you and have decided better not to show you all of those slides, and instead, over at the tables, you will see some handouts where my PowerPoint slides are. You're welcome to take those home. And the reason I put these out here is that you can have a chance to look at some of those things, and that's the information that I'm going to be using to share some of this information. Some of this comes from the Church Transformation Survey. We thought we might be able to have some time in which we as churches could maybe go through all of that actually here and do a Church Transformation Survey for 2018. We're not going to do that, but here's my request. I'm requesting that every single church in Alberta complete the Church Transformation Survey. And I would also request that the pastor or the church board or a particular representative not do that by themselves. I would urge all of you as boards or church leadership teams or maybe staff teams, but it's even better if you've got lay leaders involved, to go through that together. Some of those questions don't always make sense. That's not by accident. Okay, it's part of the learning experience that we will be paying attention to. How do people respond to some of these questions? So if you're not sure what the question means, that's okay. We want you to talk about that. We want you to discern that and kind of push into that, and that will help us to understand how best to serve you in some of these areas. Does that make sense? Okay, so the more you can kind of collaborate on that Church Transformation Survey, the better that is. So I'm going to present to you 5 or 6 things here that just kind of my observations over this last year, and most of this kind of comes out of the Church Transformation Survey and some other pieces of interaction. And so let me share some of these with you. And then following that, I'm going to invite the leaders from our various agency partners to come and bring some of their pieces of reports. So, first of all, out of what I have seen is that there is a growing awareness of disciple making. And I'm intentionally using making disciples as opposed to discipleship. It's a more accurate term of what Jesus uses. The word discipleship is not actually in the Bible as far as I can tell. We're talking about disciples who make disciples who make disciples. You've heard that repeatedly. That's what it means, the whole discipleship piece, if you will. So I encourage us to keep that language going, and as we heard Lloyd this morning, to put it into practice in the smallest kinds of ways, but do it consistently. And I think all churches are recognizing that although we've made advances, we have, that more has to happen. And as far as nationally we're concerned, we are further ahead on that in that regard than most of the other places across, or most of the other provinces. So let me just advance this here. Okay, here we go. All right. Secondly, churches value their pastors. That has come out quite clearly in this thing is not advancing here. Can you help me out there? There we go. Churches value their pastors. This was a consistent part of the evaluation that showed up, that there was this strong support for professional development. I want to continue to encourage that. Pastors and church leaders, continue to put them into places of learning. We lose our capacity to lead when we stop learning. And so keep learning. There's more to learn. And whether it's about leadership or whether it's about biblical pieces or whatever the case might be, keep moving forward. Our pastors' clusters or our staff clusters are being encouraged. We love that. There's many churches who are engaged in some form of performance reviews for their leadership, and that sharpens them, so that's really good. Thirdly, Future leaders may not sign up without intentionality. Church boards seem to be the best at least saying the people that are coming onto the boards know their role and their function. They're pretty high on that score, but the intentionality about tapping people on the shoulders for leadership is actually quite low. And what's even more surprising is that you indicated in your survey that none of you are tapping any young leaders on the shoulder for becoming cross-cultural workers. That's what you indicated. I'm not saying it's happening, but that I found really interesting, because I know there's many young people who are going to have some kind of mission experiences. So I'm not sure what that means. So are we sending them into kind of cross-cultural environments, but we're not thinking about how do we move them from that particular place of experience into really kind of something that's more long-term. We need to pay attention to that. Church planting. I think there were only one or two churches that are specifically thinking about how to develop next generation leaders of church planting for more localized mission. We need to be thinking more about that. And camping ministry, another one, was very interesting. There's a low percentage of churches that are saying to their youth and young adults, we want you to go to camp. There are so many distractions, and you all know that, but we have to find ways to get our youth and young adults into these kinds of ministries, because it is an incredible leadership development tool. Find finances somehow to make that happen would be my call to you, because it's incredibly important. And the equipping of pastors as well, better. But we need to continue to focus around, are we thinking about and planning for who will be our next generation of pastors? So church, I'm asking you to pay closer attention to that as we move through into 2018 and beyond. Number 4, going back here. Churches may be programming for Christians, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday. What does multiplying initiatives mean to churches? As we went through the survey, some of you think only in terms of church planting. A multiplying initiative is only about church planting. I suspect that's what many of you are thinking, but there's many different ways to do that. So are you thinking about how to start some new initiatives? Some of you are starting. Keep going in there. Some of you have been working on some of these areas of new kind of places. Keep going. It'll be a great strength. Churches indicated that they had some gospel presentations, but I think there's more that you can pay attention to in terms of, are you providing opportunity for people to respond on a regular, clear, consistent kind of basis, whether it's on your Sunday morning, whether it's in your other kinds of programming. The score came out a little bit low on some of these, and you can see that in the handout that'll be out there. And number 5, growth opportunities. Let me just put it this way. I think a growth area for us as churches is to plan specifically to continue to do outreach events, but to just tweak them a little bit. Think about outreach, not just about who you're reaching, but who you're training and equipping to take the next step. That's a radical difference, although at the ground level it doesn't look that much different. But it makes a huge difference in your approach to how you're equipping those people to do that. My case would be this, and I think Jesus modeled this as well. We often call our people to evangelize on their own, in their own environment. The fact of the matter is, most of us aren't that good. I know I'm not that good. I need the help of other people. In fact, research would say that somewhere between 7 and 10 very significant contacts a person needs to have with Christians before they come to faith. And I'm talking 7 to 10 meaningful relationships. We will do better at training people when we equip them through some of the outreach events that we will do. it will make it easier for them. And so we need to take on ownership to put on some outreach events that are really targeted, and we need to think ourselves in terms of being missionaries in our culture. And that's my call to us moving forward. These are growth opportunities. Leadership development, we're going to talk more about boards and those kinds of things, youth and cross-cultural things. Some of you have indicated to me, we'd love to learn more about what boards do and the responsibilities. We'll move more in that direction of training. There's all kinds of stuff that we want to continue to do with New Canadian churches. There are a group of brothers here from the Congolese congregation here in Edmonton who are thinking about perhaps joining our family of churches. And so we're walking together with brothers from the Congolese congregation here. A Chinese church in Calgary has approached us. We've got a number of Ethiopian churches who are thinking, hey, maybe we should join this family. And that could mean, 4 or 5 additional churches along the way. So part of this is how do we walk with New Canadian churches? We've got a Spanish group that we've been engaging with and trying to figure out what's the best thing for them. So there's a lot of opportunities. I'm going to put this call out. If you have been a missionary or a cross-cultural worker or would love to be engaged in that kind of a missionary type role here, we'd love to develop a small team of kind of coaches and leaders to help facilitate this for down the road, because certainly Ruthie and myself don't have the resources or the capacity to do that on our own. And I know some of you are probably really good experts in that area. If that kind of rings in your heart, I'd love to chat with you later on. And then finally, folks, we need to pray more. All this stuff looks good when it's on paper and all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, we got to pray more. And I've got to be learning this in increasing kinds of ways. And I feel a sense of urgency around that. And so would love for you to sign up for a prayer letter. I call it Mighty Fighters. And I think of David's mighty men and fighting on behalf of the whole nation of Israel. And I would love for us to have an even larger team. And so if you're interested, please put your email address down when you signed in. I know that not all of you put your email address down. We would love to have your email address. It's hard to connect with you otherwise. And that would be one way that we can get you on that list and encourage you to pray for us. All right. I'm going to skip a slide or two here, and I'm going to highlight just a couple of things here. In your booklet here, and I think it's kind of in the middle of the book, you see... what page is that? I thought I had it handy and ready, and I don't. 8 and 9, thank you. Page 8 and 9, there we go. You'll see something that looks similar to this. What I've done here in the booklet is given you outcomes. On the right-hand side, we've got various kinds of services. I'm not going to spend time here on telling you what these services are. There are many opportunities that are available, and we will continue to move through this. Things like convention, clusters, pastors' retreats, regional meetings, faith and life teams. By the way, our faith team has been very involved in credentialing. Thank you, Lawrence, in particular, for providing leadership to that. And that's been a really exciting part for what we do, and newsletter and prayer team, those kinds of things. So lots of what we do is to help us get to know each other. And we're committed to continue to make that happen. Oops, back up here. Resourcing churches. Churches have all those outcomes on the left-hand side. We've got pastoral transitions and searches. We've got 3 churches right now who are involved or who are in transition right now. And so we need to pray for those churches. We do a lot of work in those kinds of areas. And so That's a big part of what we want to do as we walk with churches in that whole area. As a lot of times leaders, they're kind of new like on this whole thing. What do we do now? And so we're walking with them on that journey and try and help them through that. Administrative and structural resources and coaching. I just want to say thank you very much to Ruthie, who has been, as has already been mentioned, works behind the scenes a lot of hours many times. And one of the things that's coming to us is this whole thing about what she calls a ministry constellation, or to put it another way, how do you organize your staff and your volunteers and resource them so that you're working together as a whole team? Many times churches say, oh, you can't, the confidentiality with a volunteer is different than a staff paid person. Well, no, there's systems and things and training that you can do, and you can figure out how to have job descriptions or position descriptions for your volunteers. Do you have those? Do you know, how do they fit together? And Ruthie has done quite a bit of work in that area together with the previous pastor that she worked with, and we're going to continue to develop that and walk alongside and coach in that area. So thank you very much, Ruthie, in that area. So I know she's standing back there. She's hearing everything, so that's good. Thank you. Developing leaders. Again, pastoral clusters, 4 chairs training, Camp Evergreen, Columbia Bible College, and MB Seminary. And I'm going to invite Bob to come on up at this time.